Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Vandanam Mrityunmukshiyamamritat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Vandanam Mrityunmukshiyamamritat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Vandanam Mrityunmukshiyamamritat. In our Puranas, we have a beautiful story of Markandeya, a young boy who was born by the boon of Lord Shiva himself. And similar to Adi Shankaracharya's life, the couple was given this boon that the child that was going to be born would live a very short span of life. And so happens that he overhears people discussing that he will die at this very young age. And so he thinks, what can I do? And I don't want to die. I'm not ready to die. And he's advised that if you chant Lord Shiva's mantra, the Trayambaka mantra, death can't come and take you. And so Markandeya sits up the whole night leading up to his birthday, chanting the mantra. And Yamaduts come. Yama is Lord of Death. The messengers of the Lord of Death come take him. And they can't, because the Shiva Duts, the messengers of Lord Shiva, the devotees of Lord Shiva, they hold the Yamaduts away. And whenever this happens, because Lord Death has a lot of say and a lot of power. And it's very strict that when our time is up, our time is up. And we're not supposed to mess. And there's so many laws in the universe making sure that nothing messes with this. And when your time's up, you can no cheating death. And so, of course, it becomes this huge thing that, we can't get him. His time is up. He has to come to the abode of Yama. So Yama turns up and sees in the Shiva Dutas of it, he's chanting the mantra. And Yama says, but his time is up. And then Shiva himself comes to say, you can't touch him because he's under my protection. And Markandeya sees all of this unfold. How blessed is that? To be able to see Yama, to see Lord Shiva, and to see Lord Shiva saying, you can't touch him because he is under my protection. And so because this story is there in the Puranas, this mantra that he chants, the Trayambaka mantra, has become so well known and has been understood to have so much power. And so Shiva blesses Markandeya that Yama can never touch him. And so Markandeya is one of the Chiranjeevis who is still alive today. Also one of the greatest rishis and knowers, because he's had this wisdom and he's actually been able to conquer death in the truest sense of the word, which we will be talking about as we explore this mantra. And so if you tell people there's a way to escape death that becomes very, very popular. So before I start on this series of talks, I just want to say that nobody after Markandeya has been able to escape death. But that doesn't take away from how incredibly powerful this mantra is. In fact, in our culture, there's two mantras that are probably the most well-known. I won't say the most powerful because all mantras are incredibly powerful, but the most well-known and probably the most often used. And that's the Savitra Gayatri, Om Bhurrbhuva Swaha. And the second is this one, the Trayambakam mantra. And so we have this book from CCMT Publications brought out by SwaminiSupriyananda. And you can get a copy because we'll be following his commentary in these classes. And it's brilliantly written, so you can even be able to understand the gist of the mantra on your own through reading this. But together, over these next 4 weeks, we shall explore this wonderful mantra. So to get started, the mantra is found in the Rudram, which is a Vedic composition, a chant of Lord Shiva, and that's found in the Krishna Yajurveda. And so it's in Veda proper. It's not made up. Vedas are known to be the very breath of God, the very beginning of creation. Creation was created with the Vedas, and so the Vedas weren't created. It was already there before the beginning of creation. And so it's immortal, and it's knowledge which is eternal. So every mantra, we know the source of the mantra. And then every mantra has a devata. And the Maha Mrityun Jaya mantra's devata is Sadashiva Maha Mrityun Jaya Rudra. Basically Lord Shiva. But when we do the Rudra, and in the Vedic culture, there is a number of Rudras, all forms of Lord Shiva. And other than Rudras, there's other forms of Shiva. And so the specific form of Lord Shiva, that is the devata of this mantra, is Sadashiva Maha Mrityun Jaya Rudra. And all of this we will be expanding on. Every mantra is also has a guru, the rishi that the mantra was revealed to. And so this mantra was revealed to actually 3 different rishis, but the ones that are most well known is Sage Vashishta, who is Ramchandraji's guru. And one of the 7 seers that, again, is just always there, keeping this culture and this knowledge alive and sacred and protecting it. Sage Vashishta and Vishwamitraji had a rivalry to Sage Vashishta. Sage Vashishta didn't have the rivalry or the animosity, but Vishwamitra did have this jealousy towards Vashishta ji. And it all starts with this. Vishwamitra at the time was a king and thought he was incredibly powerful. But when his army attacked Sage Vashishta, it was destroyed within a blink of an eye. Like an entire army destroyed in a blink of an eye. And he thought, how can somebody be so powerful? I want to be more powerful than that. And sometimes jealousy and this competitiveness can have its benefits, because in his attempt to be more powerful than Sage Vishwamitra, who is a Brahma Rishi, which is as powerful as you can possibly get because he knows Brahman and he's living in that state of Brahman. And here's this king who wants to be so powerful, but that means you have to know Brahman. And so he did immense tapasya. And in part of his tapasya is how the Gayatri mantra was revealed to him. And it was like, I have to discover one of the most amazing mantras. Why? Because Vashishta has discovered one of the most amazing mantras. And so we have these two most powerful mantras from these two most amazing rishis. And I think the beauty of their story is that Sage Vishwamitra comes to see the true glory of Vishwamitra. Other way around. Vishwamitra ji comes to see the true glory of Vashishta, is that he never had any malice in his heart the entire time Vishwamitra was trying to defeat him, to outdo him, or to Vashishta remained just compassionate and loving. And that's what conquers Vishwamitra's heart. And it's only when he sees the beauty and the purity of Vashishta ji's heart that he becomes a Brahma Rishi. And so, when we say love conquers all, this is one of those perfect examples. Although it took many, many, many years, it still worked. Love conquered every iota of jealousy that was there in his heart. So the Rishi that we attribute this mantra to is Vashishta and Vishivamadev, who's also very, very well known, very, very well respected. Every mantra is also in a particular tune, the chanda, and this one is in Anushtap chanda. And it's more, if you're from a lineage and if you know the tradition and you understand what the meter means, then it just lets you know how to chant it. But we are blessed that we've heard it chanted so many times and we don't really necessarily know the name of the tune. We just know now how to chant it. But also each chanda, the tunes, have their respective deities and have their respective vibrations. And Anustap Chanda is one of the very well-known ones. It's the one that the Bhagavad Gita is written in as well. And so each mantra has a devata, and interestingly, each mantra has a devi, the feminine counterpart to the devata, the masculine presiding deity of the mantra. And so very beautifully we see this, that there's always the feminine. It's always there, actually. We say Shiva Shakti, right? They come together. And in fact, one of the ways to praise Shiva is to say Umanath, the beloved of Uma. And and vice versa. One of the ways to praise Devi is to say she's the beloved of Shiva. And so this bringing in the yin and the yang, mantra is complete because it's balanced in its energies. And so there is the Devi that the mantra is tributed to, and this one is tributed to Amriteshwari. And the very name is one of the words in the mantra, because we say Mam Amrita At. So Goddess Amriteshwari, of the goddess of immortality. Also, Amrit is sweetness. And so the goddess of that bliss, the sweetness of joy, of Ananda, is the presiding Devi over this mantra. And so that's the background. That's in terms of when we honor a mantra, when we introduce a mantra, these would be the basic things that the way it's introduced and understood. There's also other aspects of a mantra which will traditionally be done, that when it's chanted, there's yantras that get used when chanting it. Yantras are actions. Sometimes in puja, you'll see that certain mudras are held, like they'll hold the hands across the body like this to represent kavacha, which means protection. And so the Lord who is protecting us becomes our kavacha. And so during chanting, they'll do the actions. During puja, they'll do the actions. And if you don't know any other yantra, then you'll know this one, which is the Chinmaya, which is the probably the most well-known one that is associated with meditation and with blessings. So there, all of that can be studied as well in how to do the mantra. And I'm going to do now a very, very brief overview of what the mantra means. And then as we progress, we will go deeper and deeper and deeper into the meaning and the significance of the mantra. So we add Om. Original mantras tend not to have Om. Om always gets added because Om makes everything complete. It's as simple as that. It's incomplete without Om. And actually, Om on its own is complete without anything else. But anything else without Om is not complete. So we can talk about Om, but it's a whole Upanishad. So maybe we'll stick to this mantra. Trayambakam is one with the third eye. Yajamahe, I worship. I worship the one with the third eye. Sugandhim, who is very fragrant. It always tickles me that the mantra says, Lord Shiva smells good. I worship the one who is fragrant and has three eyes. Pushti Vardhanam, who nourishes all beings. So Trayambakam, Sugandhim, and Pushti Vardhanam are three names of Lord Shiva. Yajamahe, I worship. I worship Lord Shiva, who is fragrant, nourishing all beings, and has a third eye. Urva Rukamiva Bandhanat. The urva is a cucumber. Rukamiva Bandhanat. Just as the cucumber is, what's the word? Severed. Severed from the creeper. Mrityun, death, severs us. Mokshi, may my severing or my death lead to liberation, freedom. Ma amritat, may I never neglect my spirituality. Amritat means immortality. So immortality for us is that part of our essence, which is our Atma, which is our core, which is our truth. May I never neglect that within me, my Amritatva. Amritatva is also bliss, my nature as Satchit Ananda, my nature as love, my nature which is imperishable and untaintable. May I never neglect that. So I worship Lord Shiva so that my death may be my freedom, so that I may experience my immortality. Is nicely put in English. That's not the exact translation, but in terms of the overall gist of the mantra, that is the meaning of the mantra. And so already in just the simplest understanding of what the mantra means, it's already so beautiful and so powerful. And so I worship Lord Shiva. We start with I worship Lord Shiva. And I was reading up on this. And there's this book on Lord Shiva that I've had on my shelf for the longest time. And of course, I've read it 2, 3 times. But when I opened it up today to see what can I say about Lord Shiva that everyone doesn't already know, because Chinmaya mission people are seasoned satsangis and probably heard every symbolism possible of Lord Shiva. So, and the very first page, the author says, only a fool would ever dare to describe Shiva. For even Saraswati herself could not describe Shiva. And I thought, okay, so I'm a fool. Because I'm going to be attempting to speak on, truly, the author is so correct, how to possibly be able to encapsulate all that is Shiva. And then he writes very, very beautifully. The writer nor the reader need not despair. So here, the speaker and the listener need not despair. For Shiva is the devotee of devotees and the lover of his lovers. He is the devotee of his devotees and the lover of his lovers. And through his all-encompassing, his compassion, he reveals himself to those who worship him. Shiva cannot be caught. He cannot be categorized. He cannot be labeled. He cannot be touched. Yet, when we love, we so desperately want to touch. Right? And so many people will want to physically see Lord Shiva and touch his feet. And even if we don't necessarily desperately want to see the form, we want to feel his touch in our hearts and in our lives. But the very word Shiva translates to auspiciousness, which doesn't do justice to what it means, because we use the word auspiciousness so frequently. But what auspiciousness means is it gives, it sanctifies, it purifies, it gives life to, it gives meaning, it gives purpose, it gives love. Because Shiva is life, it's consciousness. And so everything in this world that is not Shiva is Shrava, dead. And Prakriti, this world that we experience, is inert. It doesn't have life. In fact, it doesn't even have beauty. But then you add Shiva, life, and suddenly there's beauty, and there's purpose, and there's meaning. And we have always beautiful flowers in the ashram to adorn the Lord with. And they're so beautiful, and they're fresh, and they're colorful, and they have such lovely texture. And when Shiva leaves, they're so ugly. The colors drained, they droop, and they lose their fragrance, they lose their shape. But when life is there, auspiciousness is there, they're magnificent. And take any human being, Einstein, such a genius. The things he said, every single quote is worth so much. Take away Shiva. What is he? He was beautiful because Shiva was there, meaning the knowledge, right? I mean, if you see the face, it's charming, it's eccentric, but take away Shiva, and you can do that with the most good-looking person on the planet. Take away Shiva, it's not good-looking anymore. The most intelligent, brilliant person, the most talented person, the most innovative person, the most cunning person. Take away Shiva, and they are just a bundle of dirt. No more brilliance, no more beauty, no more cunningness, no more talent, no more. What is Shiva? That which gives us the essence in all things that we have. How to touch that? Even as a concept, it's so hard to explain. Like you can't even really put it into words. So we can only know him through the love that we feel, which is him. And when we love, so beautifully said by the author in this book, that the glory of Shiva is he becomes the lover of the ones who love him. That we start to feel his love in our lives. And then he reveals himself to us. We cannot know him. We cannot. Because we are limited. Only when he shows us will we see. And so we worship Yajamahi. We worship what we do know. Do we know Shiva? Not in his entirety. We know aspects. That he is glorious, that he is great, that he is creator, sustainer, destroyer, principle, that he is wise. We know aspects. We attribute a form. We attribute a role, the Lord of destruction. So we worship that. We worship what we do know. Sometimes we know very little. Who's Shiva? God. Bus, full stop. Enough. We worship what we know so that he can show us what cannot be known. So this mantra is a direct prayer to Shiva, which is one of the reasons it's so incredibly popular and well known, because the form of Lord Shiva is very intriguing, and there's many who will resonate with that form and are drawn to that form, and so would anyways want to worship Shiva, and how to. And then this mantra is a very specific, clear way on. Trayambakam yajamahe. I worship, I adore, I pray to, I revere Trayambakam, Pushti Mardana, Lord Shiva in this form. And also not only as a form, so we see that Shiva has this unique thing where we see Lord Shiva with his jata and Gangaji flowing and the three eyes and the snake and the bhasma and the Rudramala and the tiger skin and the elephant skin and the deer in his hand. And there's so many elements to the form. And so it's actually a very intricate, detailed form. Very, very, very detailed form. In fact, if you see Lord Krishna, curly hair, big eyes, flute, peacock feather, smile. Done. If you see Ramchandraji, very good looking, bow and arrow. Done. If you see Hanumanji, face of a monkey, very, very strong, carries a gada. Done. Oh, he also has curly hair. Whereas when you see Lord Shiva, there's so much details. There's the jata, there's the crescent moon, there's Gangaji flowing from his hair, and this is just his hair. Then you got the third eye, then he also smiling always. Then never mind the third eye, his normal eyes are half open, half closed, which is one of the descriptions of him. Then the throat is blue, then the snake, then the Rudrakshamala. Again, just the neck. So much happening. There's so much form in Lord Shiva's form. So many components and so many aspects. And then you have the Shivling, which is just one round shape of an egg. Sometimes not quite eggish, depending on the artist's mood. The yoni part of the Shivling isn't Shiva. The yoni part of the Shivling, the bottom bit on which the Shivling stands, is Shakti. It's Devi. It's not Shiva. So which bit's Shiva? Just the lingam. The lingam is Shiva. So you got so much detail in his form, and then you have the Shivling, which is super simple form. And the shape of an egg, because when we see an egg, unless we are experts, you don't know what egg it is. Could be a snake, could be a lizard, could be a chicken, could be I don't know what else comes from eggs now, but so many things come from eggs. And then we don't know if it's male, we don't know if it's female. Egg is so many possibilities. It's a form, but it's not a distinct form. It's just lots of possibilities of forms. It's a super simplified form. So we have Shiva with all his attributes and characteristics, which have so much form, and then super simplified version, which is Shivling. And then the reason we have nobody else has two. I mean, Vishnu has the Shaligram. The idea is we go from complex form to simple form to formless. Actual Shiva is formless. It's a principle. Even as a Devata, even if we're not thinking of Shiva as Lord of the universe and we're thinking of Shiva, the destroyer, it's a principle. It exists everywhere. Water can be highly destructive. Wind can be highly destructive. Fire can be it can take these abstract forms. And then our thoughts can be so destructive. What shape is that? Rudra. But it's not a tangible, concrete, distinct form. It's a principle. It's an energy. And then there's Shiva, the destroyer, as a Devata. And there's Shiva, the Ishvara principle, which is the supreme creator, destroyer, the supreme reality, that which is beyond name and form and guna and causation. And so we can see two aspects. We can see the aspect of Jata, Ganga, three eyes, blue neck. We can see the Shivling. We can't quite see the principle of force. We call it the principle of destruction, but it's actually just change. It's power, right? We don't see it directly. We see it through things. Even when we see in medicine a disease being cured, that's destruction. And so when we see healing happening, that's the principle of Shiva. When we see that we're carrying so much stress and bitterness in our hearts, and then in one moment of realization of, what's the point of it all, we let it go. And we find peace. And that transformation that happens within us is Shiva. Of course, we can be very peaceful and transform into horrible, bitter, resentful creatures. And that transformation is also Shiva. And it's how we want to use it, because it's a force. It's how we use it. So fire, it's so powerful. And how can we use it? We can use it to purify gold and create a metal that's so pure that we can then use within our body because it's so safe. Or we can use it to burn the body and hurt somebody. And so it's a force, and it's up to us how we're using it. Not that it's horrible. Destruction doesn't mean it's bad or good. It's just a force that exists in nature as a principle. And then we use it in different ways. And it's like dynamite. You can do such horrible things with dynamite. And yet they can use it to build tunnels through mountains so that we can get to our loved ones. And so the third aspect of Shiva is this force. And then even more subtle, the very essence in everything. Shiva is life itself, auspiciousness. It's the sacredity, if that's a word, that makes things sacred. And so this is the journey that he takes us on. He brings us into this world which so much form, buildings and flowers and mountains and rivers and other people, and then we have architecture, and there's so much form, and we're fascinated by all of it. And then finally we'll get tired of it, and we'll sit quietly and close our eyes, and we're only aware of our form. And that's also pretty complex, our own form. And then we start to see the powers within us, the principles, this universal energies that all work within us, that we have the ability to create, we have the ability to destroy, we have the ability to harness, we have the ability to see the sacredness in our heart, or to see the asuric tendencies in our hearts. And finally, in the seat of meditation, it all fades away and it comes to this place of silence. And in that silence, we see the essence of Shiva. And so his form shows us the journey that he wants to take us on. So I worship Lord Shiva. And so a lot of the glory of this mantra is the essence of who Shiva is. And why do I worship him? So one of the things that I mentioned is that he is, as a Devata, the Lord of destruction. In fact, the very word Rudra is angry. Yeah, never quite resonated with the word. But it's that force with which he moves things or get things done. You know, it's in Christianity, they say, for the fear of God, people behave. The planets rotate. So it's that essence of there's an order, there's a structure, there's an authority, and we fear that authority. And so some people resonate with that. Some people want to know that there's order. It makes them comfortable. They want to know somebody's in charge and making sure that the order is followed, because then there's justice. And then I know what to do because there's a order. And it's actually very comforting. In parenting too, this is one of the advice given, that create order and create structure, because they'll thrive in order and structure. In management also, they will advise that companies have very clear procedures on how things can be done, so that when you follow those procedures, it just becomes easy. It avoids conflict, it increases efficiency. And so when we see Shiva as that kind of a figure, that's when we think of that aspect of fear, even though it need not be, right? If I'm doing everything that I should be doing, I'll have no fear. Fear only comes in when I'm not doing what I should be doing, or I don't want to do what I should be doing. Only that's when fear comes in. But Rudraya, so destroyer. So as in this role of destroyer, he gets associated with death, because we see death as destruction. And even though Yamraj is the Lord of death, destruction, death's included. And then when we see Lord Shiva in all his characteristics, he's got vibhuti smeared all over him. And it's not fragrant cosmetic vibhuti. He's got it from the cremation parlor. No, not parlor, no parlors. Cremation grounds. Mm-hmm. So in Varanasi, you have these ghats where the bodies are brought and they are burnt on these ghats. And one of the ghats is dedicated to Lord Shiva. Well, a lot of them are dedicated, but this main one, which is dedicated to Lord Shiva. And so it's amazing. I was actually surprised. If you, like when you go to a cremation, even today in whichever city you are, how are they so busy? It means so many people are dying. Like how? How are so many people dying? Because when we look around, it's not like we can see death everywhere. And yet, in Varanasi, in these ghats, they busy all day long. And so what, however much long it takes to cremate the body, what, 20 minutes? And then the next one, and then the next one. And imagine if you're busy all day long, and they are busy all year through. It actually is astounding how common death is. And so Lord Shiva doesn't have to go far to find the bhasma. Constant supply being given to him. He takes that freshly cremated, the ash from that pyre and smears it on him. And so he's associated with death. Then one of the other ways that he is described, not in every picture, but in some stories in the Puranas, is that he wears a necklace of skulls. Yes, Kali wears a necklace of skulls, but there are stories also of Lord Shiva wearing. In the Puranas, there's a lot of interchangeability of the stories. Again, death. Skulls, even today, right? In heavy metal bands and all of that, when they have the skull, it's representative of death. And then lastly, he's fan following. Who's fan following? Lord Shiva's fan following is Bhuta Pisach, ghost, who obviously are dead. So Lord Shiva's affiliated, well versed on the topic, associated with death. And yet, it's not scary. Well, not for me, anyways, because he's the master of it. He's not killing. He is the Lord of destruction, which when we come to understand, in Balvihar language, when I explain to the kids, I say Brahmaji is the creator, so he makes things. He made the trees, he made the birds, he made the oceans. Just like when you make Lego or when you draw a painting, he makes things. Vishnu is the sustainer, he looks after things. So we have to look after our books, our house. We have to look after our clothes, our toys. He looks after. And Lord Shiva, what does he do? Please note, if you're talking to 4-year-olds, you do not tell them he destroys things. He cleans things up. When something breaks, he cleans it up. When something gets too old and you can't use it anymore, he cleans it up so you can get a new one. If there was no destruction on this planet, already we overpopulated. There'd be no space for anything. He creates space. He cleans to allow creation to take place. And so even though he's got Bhuta, Pisach as his devotees, and even though he's got the Bhasma on him, and even though he has a skull, the death is almost makes us feel it's something familiar. And when it's something familiar, it need not scare us. It need not be seen as horrible. It's just something familiar. It's just as much as life as is birth. I mean, we rejoice birth. And as busy as the cremation grounds are, hospitals are as busy with the maternity wards. And so it's just another event. As birth is another event, death is another event. And so that seeing Shiva as the destroyer helps us to be able to see it for the purpose it serves and to see it as a wonder. It's actually glorious because when birth happens, when a child is born, it didn't exist before, and now voila, it's here, and it's so real, and it's so beautiful. And exactly the same with death. It's here, it's so real, it's so beautiful, it's so tangible. and then poof, it's gone. Both of them are as wondrous. Both are as a power far beyond what we can even totally, completely absorb. Whatever power we can think of cannot compare to this power of creating and destroying. And what is he creating and destroying? Not Lego. Us. Like, we so involved in our lives, like we already the center of our universe, and then we can just be created, destroyed. Like, that's incredible power. Like, just how would we not have reverence for that which can create me and have me at their mercy to that point? Yajamahe. I am filled with reverence. I am filled with adoring. I am filled with respect. Yajamahe means all of these things. So I worship Lord Shiva. And if nothing else, if I don't understand anything else in this mantra, and I understand only this, I worship Shiva, already enough. Because this is what we're meant to be doing with our lives. Our lives are not meant for us to just eat, drink, party, make money, procreate, die. I mean, those things will happen also. Without effort, those things happen. But that's not what life's about. It's about us understanding that there is a greater force and that each one of us play a part in this grand scheme of things. And if we play our part well, we get to become one with all of it. When we don't play our parts well, we feel like limited entities that have to fight and struggle to be recognized or to survive. And we feel like limited entities that feel lonely and are not recognized, not valued, and not appreciated. And then we ourselves maybe doubt our worth and our capacities. All of this internal struggle happens when we're not aware that we are part in this bigger picture and that the goal is to see our oneness with all of this creation. But when we worship that which creates and sustains and destroys this creation, we lift ourselves at least a little bit to see and understand and feel more like Shiva himself feels, and work our ways towards becoming one with Shiva and therefore one with all of creation. And becoming one with Shiva might seem far off, but it starts with, I just love him. That's actually all I need to do. All I really need to do is just love him. And if I don't know why else to love him, he looks good. Okay. Because that's how we start loving people in the world, right? They look good. Okay. It's a good place to start. He looks good. Or at least interesting. And then he must be powerful because he can destroy. So I love him. Must be intelligent. Must be. And when I love him, I'll come to see his love in my life. And the more I come to see his love in my life, then I won't have to love him. It's just spontaneous, effortless, easy to love. So, Yajamahe is all I spoke on for today's class. I worship, I adore, I revere, I praise. Who? Lord Shiva. We'll pause here for today. Are there any questions? No. The mantra goes a lot deeper, and we will be going a lot deeper into the mantra as the weeks go on. We'll chant the mantra 3 times. Sorry, before we chant it, anyone online wants to ask a question, you can either write it on the chat or you can unmute yourself and you can ask. Trayambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtivardhanam urvarukamiva bandhanam mrityormokshiyamamritata. Om Trayambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtivardhanam urvarukamiva bandhanam mrityormokshiyamamritata. Om Trayambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtivardhanam urvarukamiva bandhanam mrityormokshiyamamritata. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Shishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.